Hello everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am bringing you guys my historical romance readathon reading vlog, and I'm super excited about doing this reading vlog and participating in this readathon. I will link all the information down below, such as who the hosts are. There was a bingo board for this with like different prompts and challenges, but to be honest, I'm not going to follow that. I'm just going to spend this week and read as many historical romances as possible. So this is a readathon that is hosted by Jess from Peace Love Books, Lacey from Lacey Book Lovers, and Lisa from Remarkably Lisa. And thank you guys so much for hosting this readathon. Basically, what characterizes a historical romance is a romance that has been written in more contemporary times but takes place in the past, and most of them tend to take place in like the Regency era, in like London, the UK kind of area. So that tends to be like the early 1800s, think around like the 1820s-ish. But as you can kind of tell, I am not the most educated when it comes to historical romance. I definitely appreciate the genre, but I haven't read a ton of them. I have read a couple of Tessa Dare's. She is by far my favorite author of this genre, and that is because both of the books of hers that I have read, I have given 5 stars. I've read a couple of Sarah MacLean's, and I've also read a few miscellaneous authors' titles, mainly from NetGalley. Yeah, that being said, I read quite a few historical romances, but at the same time, there are quite a few authors in particular that I know are very popular that I have never gotten to, and I really do want to make a point, especially during this readathon, to read mostly new to me authors, and I think I'm going to do a pretty good job of that. And for me, what I love about historical romance is the pure escapism of it all. That's really what I love about reading romances in general, but historical romance, you know, is even more in the escapism route, because in this genre, not only do you get to read a beautiful romance when reading a historical romance, but you also get to escape your everyday life and you immerse yourself in a completely different time period from your own. And it's actually really funny that this readathon is happening the week that it is, because as we know, things are escalating very quickly with the coronavirus and all of that. And so I think all of us could use a bit of escapism. And it's actually funny because I have now had quite a few friends of mine message me because they know that I'm a booktuber, they know that I review books, and they know that I read a lot of books. And so a lot of my friends have been messaging me for book recommendations because they want to escape their real life, and I totally understand that. Okay, I feel like I've been rambling on for a while. Let me just get to my TBR. So I have a little spread in my bullet journal. It is not elaborate. I definitely need to add to it, but this is my tentative TBR. So the first book I have is The Wallflower Wager by Tessa Dare. This is the only book that I own a physical copy of. Historical romances are books that I tend to have on my Kindle, which I have right here, because it's easy and convenient. I can take out a loan on a lot of historical romance novels from Libby, which is an app that my library uses. You can also get audiobooks for a lot of historical romances off of Hoopla, which is another app that my public library uses. I also have Audible Escape, which is a specific kind of part of Audible that is for romances, and they have quite a few historical romances on there. So I did download a few audiobooks off of that. So The Wallflower Wager, this is book 3 in Tessa Dare's Girl Meets Duke series. Like I said earlier in this video, Tessa Dare is by far my favorite historical romance author, even though I've only read 2 of her books. This series in particular essentially follows this group of 4 friends. They are kind of all wallflowers, and they're all kind of quirky women. They're definitely not normal in the eyes of the London ton. And so this third book, Wallflower Wager, is probably going to be the quirkiest of the 4, because it centers around Penelope, who is kind of a lot. She owns a ton of animals. She is a very eccentric person, and this guy Gabriel essentially moves in next door. He kind of wants to fix up the house next door and sell it. He knows that he's not going to be able to sell this house if potential buyers see this crazy animal lady living next door, and so he pretty much demands that she gets rid of these animals, and so that's kind of how their relationship starts. I am so excited about getting to this book. I know I'm going to love it. So many people have been raving about this particular installment. Next book on my TBR is Lord of Scoundrels by Loretta Chase. I actually read the entirety of this today, and I really enjoyed it. I'm giving it 4.5 stars. So this is definitely more of a classic historical romance. This was first published in 1995, I believe, and I've actually never read a historical romance that was published before like 2010, I think. I've really only read more recent releases in the genre, so this was also really exciting for me to get to. This is also a book that is very, very much beloved in the booktube/romance community. So many people have called this their favorite historical romance of all time. So this follows Sebastian and Jessica, and the first part of this novel is set in Paris. So essentially Jessica comes to Paris because she needs to free her brother Brent from Sebastian's very, very destructive influence. Basically, her brother like idolizes Sebastian. He's the Marquess of Dane. She knows that nothing good can come out of this friendship. And so then Sebastian and Jessica meet. There's an instant attraction. There ends up being a marriage of convenience. There's definitely a lot of other things going on in this story, but I don't want to go too in depth about it because I don't want to spoil anything about this book. I really enjoyed this mainly because of how well written it was. I think honestly this is the most well-written historical romance that I have ever read. I loved how complex the main characters were, especially Jessica and Sebastian. Jessica is probably my favorite historical romance heroine ever now. I think she's an absolute icon. I really appreciated Sebastian's character development as well. I really love their romance. You can totally see the chemistry between these two characters. Yeah, this was really great. Gave it 4.5 stars. Definitely recommend it if you are kind of looking for a way to delve into the genre. I think this is definitely a really good book to start with. And as far as the rest of my TBR, the next book I have is Lady Sophia's Lover by Lisa Kleypas. I've actually never read any of Lisa Kleypas's books before, so again, I thought that this readathon would be the perfect opportunity for me to read one of her novels. I think this is one of her first books that she ever published, but she's also written quite a few books at this point. Like, I think she's been writing for like 20 something years. So I'm just gonna read a little bit of the synopsis for this one. It says, "Why is Lady Sophia looking for a lover, and could she seduce the most marriageable man in London? Lady Sophia Sidney would do anything to ensnare the unattainable Sir Ross Cannon, her goal, to ruin his reputation and cause a scandal that would be the talk of all London. So she insinuates herself into his life by gaining his trust and living in his house." And that is the overall premise of this one. I'm very curious to see how this all plays out, you know, why she wants to ruin this man's reputation and all of those things. I've heard nothing but good things about this book and Lisa Kleypas as an author in general. A lot of people love her historical romances. She definitely seems to be one of the most popular authors, up there with like Tessa Dare and Sarah McLean and authors like that. Then we have In Bed with a Highlander by Maya Banks. This is also a book that was highly recommended specifically by Jess from Peace Love Books. This is one of her absolute favorite historical romances. I've never read a Highlander romance, so I really can't tell you much about this kind of subgenre other than this seems to be more like a medieval story in Scotland, and there's like a war going on. I think this is another kind of marriage of convenience story. I'm very much looking forward to checking this out. Okay, I feel like I've been rambling forever with this intro to this reading vlog, but I'm just so excited about this week of reading and this readathon in general. And I will definitely keep you guys as updated as possible. Hey guys, what's up? It's Wednesday afternoon. I am getting ready to film another wrap up, but I did want to update you guys. So I didn't really feel the need to update at all yesterday because I was just kind of working my way through the Wallflower Wager by Tessa Dare, and I really just didn't have anything to say until I finished it. So I loved this. Gave it 5 stars, and no one is surprised. Once again, Tessa Dare just does a phenomenal job of writing a just perfect historical romance rom-com. I have yet to encounter an author like her. If you guys have any suggestions for authors that have like a similar writing style to her, definitely let me know in the comments below. I adored the relationship between Penelope and Gabriel throughout, and as usual, the side characters just add so much to the story. I also really loved that we had all of the characters from the past 2 books come into play way, and they play a more active role in this book than the side characters play in the other two books in the series, and I really appreciated that because I just love them all so much, and all of these characters coming together definitely makes for a really funny time. Something else I really appreciate about Tessa Dare's writing is her ability to create I don't know, these like fun details and situations and put them in her stories, and it just adds so much to the reading experience. Like for instance, in this case, Penelope has a lot of different animals that she rescues, and one of them is this parrot that they discover must have lived in a brothel because this parrot just like yells very explicit sayings that one would only know from living in a brothel. So it's like things like that that I just adore about her stories, and I just wholeheartedly recommend this book and this series. This is definitely a Hufflepuff Slytherin romance, and I know we're all here for that. This series is also one that I would recommend if you've never read a historical romance before and you are curious about the genre. I would definitely start out with The Duchess Deal, and then there's also The Governess Game, and then this book, The Wallflower Wager. The Bride Bet is coming out in a few months, and I just cannot wait to have that in my hands. Also, I just want to make a note that the smut in this was grade A. The chemistry between these two characters was just everything that I needed. And yeah, so I also highly recommend this book in particular if you're looking for some really great smut in your historical romances. So I did go ahead and start another book. I actually started Lady Sophia's Lover by Lisa Kleypas. This is the first book that I have ever read from this author. I'm 25% in right now, and I am really enjoying it. She is essentially intent on exacting revenge on this man whose name is Sir Ross Cannon. He's in charge of the Bow Street Runners. That's what this series is called, is the Bow Street Runners trilogy. So first of all, the Bow Street Runners was actually a real thing. It was essentially like an elite police force in London. It was founded around 1750 and then was disbanded around like 1839. Essentially, Lady Sophia is trying to exact revenge on him because he somehow had a hand in her brother's death. At this point in the book, we don't know too much about the circumstances surrounding all of that. She has just stated numerous times that she is trying to avenge her brother's death by going after Sir Ross. She essentially becomes his assistant, and her goal is to gain access to his files so that she can find a way to ruin him, essentially. But she also wants to make him fall in love with her so that she can break his heart and therefore ruin every facet of his being. One thing I am really enjoying her writing style so far. I can definitely see why so many people love Lisa Kleypas's books, and I don't really have too much more to say other than that because, like I said, I'm only 25% of the way through, but I am having a good time. Also, I am already noticing that if I keep going with reading an entire book per day this week, I am going to get burnt out on historical romances. It's happened to me during Smuttathon. You know, I read 10 books during that week, and I found by like book 6 or 7 of that week that I was definitely getting burnt out on just reading romances. And so I think what I'm going to do to kind of help myself with this readathon is not push myself to read a book a day. But at the same time, I am enjoying my time with this readathon. I just really don't want to get burnt out before the end of the week. Okay, so that's going to be it for this wrap up. I'm going to continue working on Lady Sophia's Lover, and I will update you guys at some point tomorrow. All right, it is Thursday afternoon. Also, I apologize because there is definitely somebody doing yard work like right outside of this window, but I really needed to film this update now. So I did finish Lady Sophia's Lover earlier this afternoon. I think I'm settling on giving this a 4-star rating. I did really enjoy it. My first Lisa Kleypas book definitely did not disappoint, but it didn't quite reach that level of a 4.5 or a 5-star rating. I did really enjoy the romance between Sophia and Ross, and they had some of the best chemistry that I've ever seen in a historical romance. Their relationship was also just so open and honest, and I always really appreciate that. Also, the amount of smut in this romance and the creativity that went into some of the sex scenes took me by surprise, but I was so here for it. And then in terms of the story overall, I thought that this book had a really good balance between the passionate romance as well as there were other things going on with the Bow Street runners. There were some really great dramatic moments and action scenes, and actually there were a few plot twists that had me like dropping my jaw at some points because they were just that well done. But yeah, I did really enjoy this. I definitely would recommend it if you are a fan of historical romance and you're looking for something that's just a little bit different, because I personally haven't seen any historical romances that follow this kind of plot where the heroine is trying to ruin the hero. And I definitely look forward to reading more from Lisa Kleypas because, like I said, so many people have recommended her to me. And then I just started In Bed with a Highlander. This is by Maya Banks. I'm 20% in right now. And so far in the story, we have Marin, who is a woman. She was living in this convent and then she got abducted by this really bad man who is a leader of this clan in the Scottish Highlands, and now she has been rescued and she is in the keep of the main hero, whose name is Ewan McCabe, and Ewan has now vowed to protect her because while Marin was kidnapped by this other man, she was taking care of his son who had gone missing. So he now feels like he owes this debt to her. And so, like I said, I'm not very far into it, but they're just now kind of getting to know each other. Marin definitely does not trust Ewan. I think that's how his name is pronounced. I'm listening to the audiobook and that's what the name sounds like, but it's just spelled E-W-A-N. It's a Scottish name, so I don't really know. I think this is taking place in medieval times as well. And Marin definitely isn't very forthcoming about any information about herself. She doesn't even want to confess what her name is or anything like that because she is in possession of a prized property, and so various different men have tried to marry her in order for that property to be theirs, which was why she was abducted in the first place. So yeah, this is kind of a complicated story, but that seems to be the case with a lot of historical romances. I will probably wait and update you guys once I finish this book, and then I will give you guys my detailed thoughts later. Alright, hey guys, it is Friday afternoon. There has been kind of a change of plans with this historical readathon. So as you guys know, I started reading In Bed with a Highlander by Maya Banks yesterday, and I got to the 42% mark and I had to DNF this book, unfortunately. So if you guys want to know all of my thoughts as to why I hated this book, I have a very detailed review on my Goodreads, like literally like 5 paragraphs about why I hated this book so much. The gist of the issue is that there ended up being a rape scene between Ewan, who is the main hero, and Marin, who is the main heroine. So essentially what happened is that they got married, and as soon as they got married, the bad guy of the story, I think his name is Cameron, he is launching an attack on their keep. And so Ewan knows that if he doesn't consummate this marriage right away, that the bad guy could take Marin away and marry her himself. So he decides that he needs to drag Marin to their bedroom, and he deflowers her in a very brutal way. First of all, I hate the term deflowering, but that is a term that is used in this book. So yeah, and then right after the deed is done, he literally takes the bloody bed sheet so that he can show it to Cameron, so that he knows that the marriage has been consummated, and he leaves Marin to be understandably very upset, and she essentially like cries herself to sleep afterwards. And that scene literally made me sick to my stomach. As if that wasn't enough, Ewan feels unsettled about the way they consummated their marriage, but doesn't actually apologize or show Marin any real remorse. Only decides to show her good loving, which I guess was a term back then. I think this is like a medieval era Highlander romance, by the way. I think good loving was a term for like good sex. essentially, and he only decides to show her good loving because she claims that he must be bad at it after their first encounter. You know, he doesn't actually try to be a good husband or anything, he just wants to prove his manliness to her, and that is really yikes. There's so many yikes things happening in this book. Listen, if this is what Highlander romances are like, you can count me out, girl. This was a rape scene. You can't spin it to me any other way. Like, that's pretty much what it was, and I was left feeling very sick to my stomach, and I literally just could not read any further. I don't care what era you are setting your book in. I don't care that this is a medieval era book. I don't want to read about rape in a romance novel. I don't, okay? I mean, not that I ever want to read about rape, but the only time a rape scene makes sense is if it's in a book where it talks about how the rape was wrong. This book plays it off to be as if it was okay, and I am not okay with that. I actually decided to start reading this book by Sarah McLean. It's called One Good Earl Deserves a Lover. This is actually a book that is pretty unanimously loved in the booktube community. A lot of people view this as their favorite Sarah McLean book. I have read a couple of books from Sarah McLean. I actually read Wicked and the Wallflower, which is one of her most recent books, and then I read a novella of hers in this like Christmas story novella bind up. I enjoyed both of those. I gave them like 3 or 3.5 stars. I didn't love them, but so many people have been raving about this book in particular, and I have to say that I am really enjoying it. I am about 30% of the way through right now, and I thought I would just kind of give you guys a short little synopsis. So this is about Pippa. Her real name is Philippa, but her nickname is Pippa. And the hero, I think his name is Jasper, but all of his friends and family call him Cross. And so essentially Cross runs a gaming hell, which is essentially a casino with 3 of his best friends, and that's what this whole series is about. It's a series of 4 companion novels, and so each novel is about each of the co-owners of this gaming hell. And Pippa decides to go to Cross to essentially seek advice from him because she knows that he has a reputation of being a rake, and he knows all there is to know about women and sex and things like that. And so she goes to him because she essentially wants him to educate her about what sex is going to be like, what she should expect, what she should do to bring pleasure to her husband, things like that. And Cross at first rejects her because she is a lady of high standing in the community, and her brother-in-law is actually one of his best friends and one of the co-owners of the gaming hell. Very clear that Pippa does not want to marry the man she's engaged to, and it's also kind of clear that the man also isn't very attracted to her, so we'll see how this plays out. I am really enjoying it so far because I don't think I've ever read a historical romance with a heroine that is this nerdy. She's definitely like a scientist. She has like all of these journals of like her scientific findings and things like that, so I'm enjoying her character a lot, and it's really cool to also get background of Cross's character as well. So yeah, that being said, I will talk to you guys later. It is Sunday afternoon, the final day of the historical romance readathon. I just completed my 5th and final book. I didn't really feel a need to update you guys at all yesterday, but on Friday night, I finished One Good Earl Deserves a Lover by Sarah McLean. I am going to give this a 4-star rating. I really, really did enjoy this. Pippa is definitely becoming one of my favorite historical romance heroines. I just love that she is a nerd in every sense of the word, and she's also really quirky and funny and kind of odd, and I was just here for all of that. Cross, I think, made a pretty good hero, but to me he wasn't anything all that special. You know, Pippa definitely made this book what it is, but I definitely did enjoy the romance between the two of them. I will say, however, this is a very, very slow burn romance. They didn't even kiss until like 70% of the way through. If you do decide to read this book, definitely be prepared for that. However, I do think that McLean did such a great job writing this book that I really didn't mind that there wasn't much romance until the later half of the book. She definitely spent the first half, you know, developing these two main characters, and I think she did a really great job of that. So I definitely can see why so many people enjoy this book and why this seems to be a lot of people's favorite Sarah McLean book. Yeah, definitely settling on a 4-star rating for this one. Then the book that I was reading yesterday and today was A Duke Is Never Enough by Darcy Burke. This is an e-arc that I got off of NetGalley, so thank you so much, NetGalley. This is book 2 in her Spitfire Society series. I have now read 3 of her books, and I have to say that she is slowly but surely becoming one of my personal favorite historical romance authors. So this book is following Marcus, who is the Marquis of Ripley, and Phoebe Lennox, and these were 2 characters that were introduced in the first book, which is called Never Have I Ever with a Duke. I also really enjoyed that book as well. I gave that one 4 stars, but this book I think was even a little bit better. I just really enjoyed the romance between Marcus and Phoebe. From the very beginning, they had so much chemistry, and I honestly just couldn't get enough. Definitely looking forward to reading the 3rd book in this series. I think it's coming out in May, but I am really hoping that I can get approved for the e-arc for it, because I read both the e-arcs for this book and the first book in the series, and like I said, I've been enjoying these books so much. What I really like about Darcy Burke's writing style is that she's very much straight to the point. There's no really like filler paragraphs or anything like that. So her books are around 250 to 280 pages in length. I also really appreciate about Darcy Burke's writing style is that it's very accessible to the reader. It's very easy to understand what's going on. Some historical romances are a bit harder to read than others. You know, you do have to immerse yourself in a completely different time period and a completely different society. So when an author can really kind of help you out with that and make it easier for you to understand, I also really appreciate that. But yeah, I think I'm settling on a 4.5 star rating for this one. I just really had a great time. I thought I would go ahead and give you guys a quick little wrap up of everything that I read in case you guys forgot. So the first book I read was Lord of Scoundrels by Loretta Chase. I gave this 4.5 stars. Next I read The Wallflower Wager by Tessa Dare. Of course I gave this 5 stars. It was incredible. Then next up I read Lady Sophia's Lover by Lisa Kleypas. Gave this 4 stars. Really enjoyed that one as well. Then I tried reading In Bed with a Highlander by Maya Banks, but as you guys saw, I DNF'd that at about the 42% mark, and that was a big bag of yikes. Then after that, I picked up One Good Earl Deserves a Lover by Sarah McLean. I'm so glad that I picked this up after that book that was so yikes. I gave this one 4 stars, and then the last book, of course, is A Duke Is Never Enough by Darcy Burke, and I gave that 4.5 stars. So I think that's going to be it for this reading vlog. Once again, thank you so much to Jess, Lacey, and Lisa for hosting this really fun readathon. I overall had so much fun reading these books this week, and I really do hope that there's going to be another historical romance readathon in the future, because I would definitely participate. So thank you guys so much for watching. I would really appreciate it if you would push that like button and subscribe if you haven't, and I thank you if you do. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!